You were about to leave Italy.
I was looking for a place to live, but the barriers were enormous. There was no chance to get out anywhere except very foreign countries. I remember I tried Mongolia and exotic places like that, but it was a formidable enterprise. So this brings up another perhaps interesting chapter now. So while I was trying to, and while people that I knew who were Jewish disappeared almost daily. They just disappeared because nobody knew. During the night they were picked up, and the next day nobody had any idea where they were. Of course, I expected any time, any minute, my turn would come. In the meantime, I tried as much as I could to find a way out. And it occurred to me that during the different degrees that I had, especially the Italian degree, it was recognized in Great Britain. And therefore I got in touch with Great Britain, and they allowed me to register my Italian degree in Great Britain.
Can I interrupt for just a moment? Because the degrees, he had to take an MD degree before a dental degree, right? In Italy. You got a medical degree?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So with that in mind, and in desperation, I might say, I went to the British consul in Naples, who was my patient. And I thought I had a chance here, having a degree in Great Britain already, and he being my patient. So he said, what can I do for you? I said, well, you know, what's happening, Mussolini, Hitler, etc., etc. Yes, he knew all this, obviously. And he said, well, would you like to get a visa for Great Britain? I said, I would very much like so. If you can do that, I would be very grateful to you. And he said, I will help you. And then I made a blunder that I have never forgiven myself for, even though I'm glad in retrospect that I did it. And I said, it shouldn't be too difficult for you because I have already a license to practice in Great Britain. With that, he turned to me and he said, I wished you wouldn't have said that, but now I cannot give you a visa for Great Britain. Neither the medical nor the dental association would ever allow me to give you a visa. I said, naive as I still was in those days, well, why not? Obviously I thought it was a plus, but he said it's impossible now because you would be competition. And I'm not allowed to give you a visa. But he said, I still want to help you, give you a visa for Malta. The Isle of Malta. The Isle of Malta, if I have the visa, still have it, and anybody likes to buy it from me, I'll sell it to you. But the Isle of Malta, if I had accepted this, I again would not be here to talk to you because it was the first place that Hitler occupied in the Mediterranean. And it's a small place, and if I was too much a competition for the British community, I certainly would have been more of a competition for a very small place like Malta. Anyway, I didn't accept that. So with that, I took a chance. So in desperation, again, England being out, I decided to go and visit the American consul, well knowing, who was also my patient, well knowing that there was a quota which was for years finished, no more, and I had no relatives in the United States, and all rational consideration told me it's impossible to get to the United States, but when you have no choice, you do everything, and I did everything. So I went to the American consul. And again, the consul said to me, "What can I do for you?" And I told him, and he said, "Well, you know that the German quota is filled for several years." Well, I didn't answer that, because I didn't want to lie. But he said, "Do you remember when I first came to you as a patient? Didn't you then tell me that you wanted to go to the United States?" Well, between you and me, I can say it now openly, nothing was further from my mind at that time. So he said, "Do you remember when that was, when I first came to you?" And I said, "No, I don't remember." He said, "Well, I still have my appointment book. If you allow me, I just check it." And he came out, and he was the first man that I ever had the temptation of kissing when he came out and said, "You know, it was just about 10 days before the quota closed. You're on." And that was a great, great revelation. But it wasn't as simple as it sounds now. I still needed an affidavit, I still needed a sponsor, and I still needed lots of other things before I could actually leave. And in the meantime, the news around me became tighter and tighter, because Hitler decided that the Italian police is inefficient, is not effective enough, and therefore he sends the Gestapo to Italy. And they arrived in Italy, and more people disappeared. And every minute I expected I would be next. Well, I told all my patients, and I had lots of foreign patients in Naples, there are lots of tourists there, all my foreign patients, two things. When they came from America, "Can you get me an affidavit?" When they came from other places, "Give me your address and I will tell you the bill in lira, but I don't want you to pay me here. When the time comes, if I ever make it out of Italy, I'm going to send you where I lived, and then you can send it." Without going back to the first problem, for many years I couldn't say this without a great deal of emotion. When I finally came to the United States against all expectations, and I sent those letters to those patients that were from different countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and you name it, England, not one of them failed to send the bill. And that was the only real money that I had when I came to the United States. And I'm very happy to say this in public. And now I know my wife will scold me if I don't tell you this incident from Italy that she is very anxious for me always to tell, and I don't talk very often about this, as you know. And that is when I left finally, when I got a visa, when I got an affidavit. And I'll tell you in a minute, and I should have told you this before, obviously, what happened. But the incident was the following. I told you my salary is $15 a month, of which I saved a little bit every month because I knew I was alone, I had no family, I had nobody to support me. So I had a bank account. And when the time came that I had to leave, I went to the bank. And the teller said, "What can I do for you?" I said, "I want to close my account." And he said to me, "Close the account? Are you unhappy with our services?" I said, "No, it's nothing to do with you." And he said, "Well, may I ask you why you want to close your account?" I said, "Because I am a Jew, and Mussolini has made a pact with Hitler." And he said, "That's why you want to leave?" And very silently, in the meantime, 10 people had lined up behind me. He collected the little bit of money that I had, but instead of giving it to me, he came out of his booth, came around, and gave me the book with the money and took me in his arms and kissed me on both cheeks and said, "Tell everybody in America that we, the people in Italy, do not approve of this." And I could not say this for many, many years. So anyway, now I think I probably have to come to a close soon, or is it okay to keep on?
Not 20 minutes you have.
Oh, okay, good. So I got the affidavit by a young social worker from Minnesota who was my patient, and when I told her, she said, "As soon as I get home, I sent the affidavit." So very, very anxious and very eager, I took the affidavit, went to the consul, and he looked at it and he said, "I'm sorry, you know I'd like to help you, but this young lady doesn't make enough money to sustain herself. She's a social worker, she has a very low salary. It is not enough. Either you have to show money of your own in America, or somebody who has a substantial amount of money at his disposal in case he needs it for your support." So that was another disappointment, and I started to work on it. And again, something which I call a miracle happened. I got 2 young people, one of them I did not even know, who transferred their money in my name on a bank account and sent the bank books, 2 bank books, to me in Italy. And that was such an extraordinary thing that people would do that. Of course, one of them, as soon as I came back to the United States, he came to the boat, and he wanted my signature on release, which I was happy to give him, and understood his, because he didn't even know me. I'd never seen him, never talked to him before. Somebody told him about my life and my need for this, and he was willing to do that. So 2 of them, and that, when I had those 2 bank books in my name and came to the consul, he said, "That will do." So he gave me the visa for the United States. But while he gave me the visa, I might mention another thing. that I left out at the proper place. While I was looking for the papers to get done, I got an invitation to a physical examination at the consulate, because he had to pass, among others, physical examination. And here I had just barely recovered from my typhoid infection. I could hardly stand on my legs when this came. But I knew if I let it pass, it's maybe too late, and it certainly would have been too late. So I went trembling to the consulate, American consulate, for the physical examination, and very anxious for the physician not to discover how miserable my physical health was at this time. And I somehow succeeded again, otherwise I wouldn't be here. I passed the physical against all expectation. So anyway, I just went into some of those details because I'm aware that while you hear from concentration camp victims, you do not get the whole spectrum of people who are part of this terrible Holocaust years. The years that are unbelievable, unexplainable to civilized people, but they happened, even though some people now claim the Holocaust never happened, but that's part of what you have to take. Now let me just conclude now with some of the things that happened once in America. One more episode before that. On the boat from Italy to New York, the Italian boat Vulcania was a big boat, and I was under the mistaken impression that once I am halfway over from Europe to America, I'm safe. Of course, it was totally wrong, and I didn't realize that then, but I was carefully looking at this chart of the boat, where the boat was on the way to America. And while I was standing there, I was about halfway during the crossing. I was waiting to go over the halfway. Well, this was totally ignorance on my part. It didn't apply at all. My name is being called. And of course, I don't know if you understand what that meant in those days. It was constantly in fear that they get you at the final moment. So trembling, I went to the purser and I said, "You called me over the phone, over the megaphone?" And she said, "Oh yes," I said, "the ship's doctor needs an assistant. Would you be willing to go down?" Well, this was the next man that I would have liked to kiss, because I was so elated and so surprised. But those are little incidents that happen on the way. But now I want to tell you a few things about America. Well, in America, again, I had to learn a new language. I had to qualify. I had to qualify now. I had two professions to qualify, dentistry and medicine. But I had those two degrees. And while I could take my state boards in medicine, in dentistry, I couldn't. I had to go back to school. Couldn't find a school. I finally found a school, and I skip a lot now, but I graduated from the school. It was the University of Louisville, a very good school, and the dean and another dean wrote a book based on my background, educational background, that has been published, but didn't work out too well because the book was suggested future dentist to be a physician first, like my experience, and then a dentist. And the idea was that people would get their medical degree first, and then 2 more years, and they would get a medical degree.
A dental degree after that.
A dental degree, both degrees after 6 years. It was tried at Harvard, at Columbia, and one more university that I can think of now in the United States. Total failure for one reason only. After 4 years, when the boys graduated as physicians, they didn't want to spend 2 more years in school. So it didn't work. It did not work. But anyway, I had trouble getting the position, but then I graduated from school in dentistry here, and I wanted to take my state board examination. I was told by the dean, "Oh no, we didn't expect you to stay here. You have to go back to New York because you can't take the state boards here because." And I was dumbfounded, of course, because I promised that you would never settle here before I took you. And you were the only one, the first one I took, as he puts it, of those in the East. And you can figure out what he meant by those in the East. But anyway, I could not take the state boards. I had to go back to New York. Coming back to New York turned out to be my lucky star. My first episode in New York was I took a walk on 57th Street. And those of you who come from New York will recognize this. And there was a building with a big sign, Automart. Anybody from New York who remembers this? Yes. Automart. And I was curious what an Automart is, so I walked in there, and it was around Pesach time. And I see that they have for 5 or 10 cents, depending on your appetite, you could put into the Automart and draw a matzo ball soup. And I had not seen or heard of matzo balls since I left my home, my mother's home. And I was anxious to invest a huge amount of 5 cents, and out came 2 big matzo balls. And I looked at the matzo balls, and I looked at the people surrounding me, and as I put the matzo balls down, I saw that they were reading Hebrew newspapers, something that I couldn't understand. How do they dare to read Hebrew newspapers? In Europe, they beat you on the street, they beat you wherever you are, they try to find you because they want to do harm to you for no other reason because you are a Jew. And here people dare to eat, but I became so filled with emotion that I could not really eat the soup. And I'm sure it was not as good as my mother's anyway. But then came another incident. With that, I think I'm going to close. And that is, I opened an office in New York after having passed both state board examinations. And then I met a young lady at a social meeting. That young lady is sitting here now, right in the front seat. I met her and I decided that I never had met anything better than she was, so I might as well marry her as soon as possible. And when I did this, I did the best thing I ever did in my life, because, first of all, for 65 years thereafter, I had something that I didn't have in all the previous years, and that is companionship. I had a companion, I had somebody who I could talk to and exchange ideas with, and I had somebody who had a sense of humor. A sense of humor that I wasn't used to. As a matter of fact, in retrospect, I realized that until I met my then and now wife, Lottie, I had not laughed. I did not know how to laugh. It occurred to me in retrospect, she told me how to laugh again. And that is something that I do not know if you appreciate it. That is a very, very essential thing. So I'm glad that all the things that I went through happened, and I finally landed my wife Lottie, and with that I think I'm going to close my talk.
May I give you a couple of hints after that? You haven't talked about your philanthropy and Ben Gurion University. Would you like to make a couple of statements about that?
No, by the way, I got a call yesterday from the professor.
Yeah, talk in the mic. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I don't particularly want to talk about that, but I'm in close touch with Ben Gurion University, which has a campus named in our name and my wife's and my name at Ben Gurion University, which, for those who do not know where Ben Gurion is, it's in the desert in Israel, and it has by now 18,000 students, where there once was nothing but rocks and sand. There are now gardens and beautiful buildings, and scientists from all over the world are working at Ben Gurion University, and the campus is named after Lottie and myself.
And then I would just comment that on the way in, you probably saw their names on the front of our own sanctuary. So thank you for your generosity on behalf of all of us in the congregation. So let's give a round of applause.